Identify and book the world's best speakers for your next event. Mina Speakers is the leading speakers and MC bureau in the Middle East. We bring global talent to the region and have established the region as a key global hub for speakers. Inspire and motivate your audience. Find exactly what you are looking for by working closely with us to assist you in understanding the cost-benefit analysis tied to selecting a speaker for any event. Ensure that your audience is educated, engaged, and empowered. Connect with us for a quick response and tailored advice. Book your speakers now.
Do you have an all-star HR team? You may feel your team is already performing at a high level, but let's take a closer look. Would your company's top leaders and employees agree that your HR team are operating at a high level? Are team members able to influence top executives on difficult topics? Are team members' business and strategy focused on the challenges the organization is facing? Does the executive team trust your direct reports as advisors on human capital issues? If you can answer yes to these questions, you have built an outstanding team. If you feel there is room for improvement, Strategy Focused Group can create a custom development program to elevate the quality of your HR team. We use HCI certification programs as well as non-certified HRBP MBA Masterclass to give your team a laser focus on the business and strategy. Please email us at info@strategyfocusedgroup.com.
Good morning, good evening, depending upon what part of the world you're in. If it's Friday, it's the CEO series, where we talk to global leaders, entrepreneurs, disruptors, and innovators. Our guest today is a dear friend, Jim Knight, global culture expert that teaches organizations how to attain rockstar status. He cut his teeth in the hospitality industry, attaining the role of head of global training for Hard Rock Cafe, where he led the HR corporate university. His team during that tenure won many awards. He has been recognized by Training Magazine as one of the top training executives globally. His work has been featured in Forbes, Inc. Magazine, Entrepreneur, and a host of other publications. My brother, let's welcome Jim Knight.
What's up, my friend? 10 years in the making. We're finally back together again.
Finally back together again, man. We reminisce a little bit, and we'll talk about that. It's been 10 years since we were on the stage together. So thank you very much for being a guest on the show.
Well, I'm excited. I'm super excited. Thanks a lot for having me be a part of the CEO series. Thank you.
Well, you know what? Walk us through you've had an amazing career, from starting as a trainer to running a training department to now a recognized global speaker and a culture expert. Walk us through that journey.
Yeah, I might even take a step before that. I when I left high school to go to college, I did have a scholarship. So I was going to be a rock and roller. I wanted to be a musician for a living. And I do have my music degree, but I found out, Ron, that while you were there at university to do that for a living, you actually had to be good. So I changed careers. I was mediocre. I wasn't the best singer, I would say, but became a middle school teacher. I did that for 6 years. And I think that's what really helped me when I finally got my job at Hard Rock, really just as a host. I was just seating tables. I mean, that was really something I thought that I could do. I didn't have a lot of skills, but I fell in love with the culture and the people and just the brand itself. I have a massive crush on the company still. And I stayed there 21 years. So, I still pull the levers of music, education, and hospitality. And I was only in the field for about 2.5 years. The remainder of my time was in training and development and human resources. So I will say that those 2 decades really is what set the stage for me to ultimately, leap beyond that and say, I think I could speak for a living. And instead of just really affecting this one brand, could I maybe go vertical and be a speaker, maybe an author, maybe get into podcasting and impact and influence other industries. So that's really been the goal. The transition has been great, very positive. I don't work heartily at all. If I'm in a company that isn't working for me, I tend to bail with that super quick. But I'm a long timer. I've stayed anywhere between 3 and 5 years at all of my jobs, but 21 at Hard Rock.
Wow. That's amazing. That's amazing. So, when did you feel that you had this knack for speaking? So, for the audience, I want to give you a backstory. So, we worked
Yes.
together 10 years ago, and I was the moderator or MC of the program, and Jim was the opening keynote. And we had met, kind of shake hands, that kind of thing. And I
Yep.
introduced him. I went and sat down, and this man took the stage, and he rocked the stage. He rocked the stage at a level that I was almost embarrassed to come back up and do my little thing, because it was my first time being an MC. And I kept thinking about that. Said, "Oh my, I've never seen one just command the stage." So when did you kind of realize that maybe I'm pretty good standing up here, engaging with people?
First off, I'm a big believer in Norman Vincent Peale. I believe in the power of positive thinking. So I do on purpose try and own my space wherever I am. I'm also a big believer that things don't happen to you, they happen for you. And if you take that mindset, you start looking for windows of opportunity. So I guess I'd have to say I love performing anyway. That's why the reason I gave you a little bit of that backstory, that I loved performing as a musician and really doing community theater. But then even as a school teacher, being in front of kids, I like that. But it really was all of my time at Hard Rock. As I'm doing more and more internal training sessions, I started speaking on the side probably my last 10 years at Hard Rock. And I did it honestly as sort of a goof. Somebody asked me to speak at their networking event, some luncheon for free. I went and did it. And then somebody in the back of the room came up afterwards and said, "Hey, can you come do this at my company in this state? How much do you charge?" So that was one light bulb to go, oh, I think I might be able to do something with this.
And
for 10 years, I did charge people, but I never took the money. I gave all the money to Hard Rock. So I became a revenue generating initiative. But I can point back to the one true thing when I was right at the beginning of leaving Hard Rock. This is in 2012. I was doing some stuff on the side. There was a local SHRM. I'm sure your audience is very familiar with SHRM.
Yeah.
A local chapter, HR Florida. They had a keynote speaker that backed out the night before. Somebody that was on the board knew me. This was the opening keynote slot, so you would know the other two keynote speakers. But I was the one to start the whole thing off, and nobody knew who I was. And there were about 4,000 people in that audience. So once you sort of get through that, you're like, okay, I think I can do this for a living. So, a couple pivotal moments, but that's one who probably put me on the map.
Yeah, get through that moment, because the key thing you said, 4,000 people. I've got to get up and speak and engage 4,000 people.
Yeah.
The mental, the mental turn for that, to get in the game.
Yeah. And I absolutely love it. I mean, I love those big crowds, but I'm just as happy being in front of 20 people in a workshop environment too. So I've now taken this stance of it doesn't matter the audience size. I mean, I was speaking in front of some funeral directors at a conference at one point, and one funeral director asked me to come to his location. He only had 4 employees. They were all over the age of 60 years old. And I did it in a break room with a card table and the 4 of them there. And I did exactly what I did on the stage in front of 1,000 funeral directors. So I'm still going to bring the thunder regardless of the number, but I will always point to that big SHRM event and say, that's the one that really, that was the epiphany for me to say I could do this for a living. I'm never going to work for anybody ever again.
Yeah, I understand. So, anytime you transition to speaker, there's always those moments that was kind of the pivotal moment in doing that. So, is it different? Does the audience make a difference as to how you engage them? Because, and the reason I ask that, you're going from, say, hospitality business, and now you're going to funeral directors, which is,
yes.
I'm trying to find a nice way to say that,
Yeah. It does make a little bit of a difference. And I'll be honest with you, Ron, I thought when I left Hard Rock, the majority of the stuff I would do would be in hospitality. I know that's a big part of your audience as well.
Yeah.
But a lot of mine is far from it. It's real estate, financial institutions, automotive repair. Yeah, funeral directors. I joke about that because for many years, they were one of my number one clients.
Yeah.
I guess if I'm doing something in food and beverage or hospitality in general, sometimes I might know the event planner or the CEO who's going to introduce me. I think if they wind up prepping the audience a little bit more, they're a little bit more receptive to me. But honestly, the shock and awe of the hair and the blue jeans and the rock and roll, sometimes it's just as cool to be in front of an industry that might be, I don't know the word, it might be middle of the road, a little bit safer, a little bit more conservative. I'm just a little bit of a breath of fresh air compared to what they're doing. Sort of like the TLNT event that we did.
Yeah.
It's just going to be different. And as long as they're open-minded, I think I got a really good chance of sharing my edutainment.
Yeah. Well, I've followed you since we met, and I noticed that your audience, as you said, it's varied from wherever you are.
Oh yeah.
And being able to transition that from one event to another so that they walk away feeling something. So let's talk about culture.
Yeah.
So that's kind of the big issue in organizations today. They're trying to figure out how to realign or how to start from scratch or whatever it is.
Yeah.
Talk about culture and why that's important.
Yeah, it's quite the buzzword, right? Like I do remember, really now everybody talks about it. But if you go back in time 25, 30 years ago, it was almost an afterthought. I think a lot of C-suite executives, I think they thought of it as being more of a byproduct than anything else. And sometimes, Ron, I'd go in and slap down the culture card and try and talk to a CEO that we ought to do this initiative or do that because it'd be cool and fun. If it wasn't tied to the business results, I was just laughed out of the room.
Yeah.
But now there are way too many awesome examples of companies that swear the only reason that they are where they are or they've been able to maintain and perpetuate their company is because of their culture. And I personally equate that as because of their people. A collection of humans, these individuals that have unique behaviors. Some of those behaviors are awesome and some of them not so much. But whoever's in the environment at that moment, that is your culture. And so I am pushing quite a bit with C-suite executives that they're going to have to think differently. First and foremost, they better hire and love on and retain rock stars. I mean, you really, even in this crazy environment right now, you've got to hire the absolute best and get the right prototypical employee for your brand, your company, and then get them to stay with you longer because there's a direct correlation between turnover and sales.
Yeah.
So I think that's a big thing. There's obviously things that you guys will talk about, doing a SWOT analysis, doing employee surveys. Yeah. Execute against those. But I think if you really are just rigorous about your interviewing standards and get the right ones, man, everything else is going to fall into place. There's some other things that I can talk about too, but that's really what I push more than anything else.
Yeah, the key. So you talked about CEOs and they laugh you out of the room because they were looking at it more of a customer experience. Let's always max out the customer experience. The other pieces will fall into place. And what you're saying is work on the employee experience and that will translate. Is that?
It is. And to take it a step further, when I'm saying if they're looking at the customer experience, and they were, but they also focus a lot on the product, on the environment, on the process, on the tool, on the form, on the logo, on the color palette, whatever it is, the tactical, practical stuff. That's what they focus on. And now I just believe that if you focus on the employee experience, if you just get that part right, and it's everything, it's how you even start to think about them, how you recruit, interview, hire, train, communicate, reward, recognize, even terminate from somebody. There's a pathway. And if you get that part right, it'll parlay up to the customer experience. So I think whereas before they knew, and they'll tell you the employees are the most important asset, but it depends on where they actually put their words in their mouth, right?
Yeah. Well, I always, when I kind of a big fan of CNBC when I travel and I've got it on, and when I hear a senior leader says employees are our greatest asset, I said I would love to be the interviewer because my follow-up would be, so give us 3 examples of how you exhibit that inside of your
exactly. Just watch them fall back. You got it.
On the flip side of that, I'm standing outside the so-called gate at 4:30, and I asked the employee, said, your CEO just mentioned you're the greatest asset. Can you give us some examples of how you are treated inside? And there's always the disconnect.
See if those match up. Exactly. I will say this too, and this is a little bit of a selfless, a plug, if you will. Sometimes you really do need a third party outside perspective. If you've been doing things the same way, I do think that part of my journey and part of my success has been if you plot me in there to maybe just be a catalyst to get them to start thinking differently. Now you've got some common language and you can run from there. So a lot of times, the industry, regardless of what it is, just needs a little bit of an infusion. They need a swift kick because maybe the CEOs have got some blinders on. But you know what? There's just too many great examples out there for you to ignore it now.
Yeah, you're so correct in saying that. So how does a company, if they're concerned about culture, and everyone talks a different version of culture, you as the culture expert, what would be some signs that you could see emanating from your workforce or the organization that we're not where we need to be?
Yeah, well, there's probably a lot. I would say it winds up being communication is a big one. Even in this environment where people are starting to work from home or hybrid environments. And, I do think a lot of companies are building in more flexibility because first off, the employee doesn't need you as much as we need the employee. So if it isn't really something that works out for them, they're just going to leave and go somewhere else. It was probably different about 20 years ago. So I think you've got to communicate a little bit more. And I think to your point, if you start to feel like nobody is seeing me as a whole person, they're not recognizing me, whether they're not having enough one-on-ones, we're not having enough meetings, I'm not in the know, they're not listening to my needs or responding to it, well, then it starts to get a little bit squirrely for people. So on the flip side, I think communicating is one of those things that I think the executives have to do, along with amping up benefits and being a little bit more flexible and maybe allowing people to work from home. And if maybe that doesn't work, you start thinking about some of the other benefits like pet insurance, like providing some mental health and wellness, some sort of awareness that we see you, we hear you, we know your hopes, your fears, some things that are really important to you. Yes, we want to help you get to the next level, but all the stuff that we used to think about from money and benefits and 401k and all that stuff, that's all price of admission stuff. Now, I need you to see me one-on-one, and how can you cater things to me?
Yeah. So I was talking with an executive, and he said, but we offer a fantastic financial package. I said, and
yes,
everybody else offers a financial package. What are you offering beyond that? So that takes us into a conversation we had earlier. The DNA of a workforce. The DNA of a workforce today is looking for these things. Our parents' generation, they would have come there, stayed for 20 years, and taken whatever the company dished out.
Yeah.
Because the end goal was to get out and get a pension or whatever it was.
Yeah.
Talk to us about this new workforce and why do we have to do this now?
Well, I think the world is changing, and certainly the pandemic, I think, is now. I maybe didn't think so much about this at the beginning of the pandemic, but it certainly now post-COVID has changed things forever because I do think employers are going to have to think differently. You're going to have to provide more, as we talked about, communication, maybe amp up your benefits, mentorship, doing some one-on-one and helping you get to the next level. I think now I've been speaking lately to a lot of benefits organizations. And if you're not literally talking about culture or purpose or values, then it really deters potential employees from coming to work for you. So if you've got two like businesses and one actually says, here's what we're about, and we're going to tell you what our mission and our vision and what our service philosophy is. If you're not being very overt about that, people start to get really squirrely about it because they're not going to invest any of this long-term energy and effort and rigor to stay with you. So, these are things that I talk about quite a bit. But now on the back end, I do think employers are just going to have to focus on loving on their employees a little bit more. And it might be small little tactical things where you can reward and recognize and even doing that in front of people. I think people like public recognition, but in general, just having one-on-one conversation and people feeling like they're seen, they're heard, their voice matters. Man, that actually is a big deal. So you got to love the ones you're with. I like to say you got to find the rock stars first, but then do everything in our power to get them to stay with you. And that's going to require some love.
So that was a song, right? Love the one you're with. Was it?
You got it. I'm going to try and put some band and brand analogies in there somewhere.
I got it. I got it. So in order for me to communicate, that means I've got to listen.
Yeah.
And a lot of organizations, they don't listen. I mean, I was the former CEO of Great Place to Work, and you'd give these surveys back and say, you're in bad shape. But they wouldn't listen because they still had the ideas they were going to keep moving.
Yeah.
Talk to us about listening, the importance of listening to this group of our most valuable asset.
Yeah, when I first, I did this at Hard Rock, but certainly after I've come out and just been a keynote speaker, I would try and get certified in a lot of, I think, personality type programs, DISC, Colors, Myers-Briggs. I was certified in all that. The one that probably hit me the most was Stephen Covey with the 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. We brought it to Hard Rock while I was there. We Hard Rockized the heck out of the thing. But those principles have stayed with me. And the one that probably got me the most was all about listening. And I will tell you, Ron, this is probably if you think about the different types of communication, right? Writing, speaking, listening. Everybody listening right now, watching, we've all had some sort of training on writing. You get a lot of that from elementary school all the way up. We've probably had some speaking, maybe starting in high school. Certainly if you went to college and university, you had to do some sort of speech class. Where are the listening classes? Like nobody ever teaches you how to listen. And so what happens is because the way we are is because we're learned beings. We learn all of our behaviors, everything from school, parents, friends, the playground, religion, lack of religion. By the time you come to me as some 19, 20, 21-year-old kid wanting a job, you are the way you are. And if your natural disposition isn't to smile or have a good personality or not listen to other people, that's going to be a problem for me. And it's not really their fault. They're going to have to actively go out and find this training. So I think the 7 habits and Covey really focus on getting people to understand, to listen to people. It's way more important to be interested than interesting. And instead of trying to sell yourself, you got to really listen to people, not with the intent to reply, but really understand them to the extent that you can almost repeat back what they were saying. When you can get to that level, wow, people feel heard. And now you can progress in the conversation.
So you talked about the listening only for the pause to respond, which means I was not listening in the first place.
Yes, exactly. And you can tell when people aren't listening anyway. So I think if the really great leaders in the world are the ones that have really taken the time to listen intently, get the person's understanding before they move on, or else it's just point, counterpoint. You're just hitting and there's conflict all the time. I think the really great listeners, they turn out to be the great leaders.
Yeah. So we got a comment here, question here from Joy Branch. Thank you, Joy, for being
Joy.
Listening. And she said, can you address burnout, whether C-suite members are aware of this reality?
Yeah, I think they are aware of it. I think they don't know what to do with it.
Yeah.
I think everybody is going to scream burnout. And depending on the industry, I mean, I can't even imagine what it's like to have worked in the healthcare industry.
Oh, you're talking about,
I'm sure burnout is just rampant. And you can see it from the amount of people that are just flat out, they're not requesting, they're just mandating, I'm only going to work 4 days a week now, or I'm only going to work 4 hours. You got to figure it out. I mean, they need to take more vacation time. I think C-suite executives are aware of it. They're just not sure what to do because they're still working in this paradigm of, and I'm going to use this loosely, I know people work differently, but let's say banking in general, Monday through Friday, 9 to 5, we're going to go back to the way things always were. They're waiting for that to occur. It's just not going to happen. So I think the CEOs got to pull together all the executives to talk about what they could do. I mentioned earlier doing a SWOT analysis. I'm sure everybody knows strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, threats. Really do a deep dive to find out where the areas are. Ask the employees, ask the customer, and sort of put all that together and go, now we're going to execute against it. But part of it is internally for employees. There is real burnout there, and you're going to have to do some things, whether it's providing different benefits, giving them a little bit more time off, being way more patient these days. Resiliency is so instrumental. You can't just now put them back into the fray, because that burnout is just absolutely going to lead to probably more than turnover. You might see something negative in their personal life because of burnout, and it's a shame.
Yeah. So, but one of the key points you mentioned was ask. We have to ask the employees. So that comes back, if we ask, that means we've got to listen to what they're saying.
That's right. And it might not be in a group setting. So that means an executive is going to have to think differently. It's probably going to be more one-on-one. But just being aware of it and listening to people. Listen, there's a reason why people do things like employee surveys. I know those are probably overused.
Yeah.
I would never do an employee survey unless you're going to do something about it. And if you're going to do that, do an employee survey every 6 months, not once a year.
Yeah.
Now, all of a sudden, people can see whether change is happening or not. So now take that same mindset with people that you really do think, man, they've been beaten about the face for so long, especially the last 2.5 years. How could I have some conversations with somebody one-on-one and now readdress it 6 months? How am I doing? Are we addressing some of the things that you talked about? Have we been able to help you still fall madly in love with our brand, because we need you to stay and we love on you as well?
I saw a quote you mentioned. You said that rockstar companies treat their employees and customers so well, they solidify lifelong commitments to the brands.
Yeah.
Love the one you're with.
That's right. Look, it's coming back again, but it's the truth. I think if you really can focus, and again, I know you mentioned both, whether it's internally with the employees or externally with whatever the consumer, the customer, the guest is, I think you can produce loyalty so much so that even if a competitor came along with a cheaper price with the same type of product across the street, maybe even more convenient, I personally would drive right past that to go to my same old that somebody's paying attention to me. Yeah. What you're going to get with me is loyalty. I am an experiential starved consumer. When I personally go to eat, drink, shop, stay, play, do whatever, I'm looking for people to treat me like a rock star. When that happens, you got me. You got me for a long time, unless somebody violates really my value orientation. It'll take a lot for somebody to come get the meat hooks out of me. I think every company ought to be thinking like that.
So we talked about the C-suite, and sometimes being absolutely clueless and totally disconnected. You look at the news, and I saw a law firm last week said that people could work from anywhere, but if you decide to move into another geographical region, you're going to have to pay. Your salary will be deducted as a result of that.
Interesting.
And I'm thinking, how did you think of that one? I mean, did you post that against your people, or was that just kind of a C-suite decision?
Yeah, I think you could have gotten away with that again pre-COVID, maybe 3 years ago. There's no way. If you told me that you were going to take my salary, let's say I lived in California, so I'm in the States, I'm in Florida, but let's say I'm in California where it's very expensive to live, and you're going to move me to Texas where it's very inexpensive to live. There's no way you're going to convince me to lower my salary. I'm just not going to do it. And so you'll just lose out on me as an employee that's willing to move. You're going to have to suck it up and continue to pay me that. Figure it out somewhere else, but it's not going to be on the salary. I think back in the day, you could get away with it. These days, there's no way. I would disagree with the person who said that.
Yeah. Well, I disagreed. And when I saw the comments, I said, good for you, because you didn't think this through, in doing that. But because my thought is, from a comp and ben side, if I open it up to working from anywhere, and you move to a cheaper geographical region, I can hire from that region and pay that same salary for that region. So in the end, it will all balance out.
Exactly.
Long term, it will all balance out.
Exactly. And if they were hybrid, if they were working a little bit from home or maybe full-time from home, what difference does it make? Doesn't matter where you want to put me in Alaska, put me in Maine. It doesn't matter. I'm still going to produce the great results. I mean, that's what you have to believe if you're bringing this person on to represent the brand. I disagree with that person.
Yeah. So let's go back to the people inside of the organization. So we're trying to understand what our organization is going through, and all these decisions are made, and we're just reacting to them. And we talked about listening. How could we listen more? So you mentioned surveys, and one of the key points you mentioned, if you do a survey and you don't do anything about it, you don't react to it, it's a waste of time.
Yeah.
Any other cool ways that we could listen more, or techniques? Or
I would think about any communication conduit. What kind of forum could you put into place? I think after you hire somebody, you could put in what I call a REX meeting. It's a reality versus expectations. People will do it 30, 60, 90 days in. Are we doing the things we said we were going to do? and our orientation, our day one. I think if you wind up coming over the top with the employee surveys, I think if you get down to department managers having ongoing performance discussions, not a performance appraisal, not because HR told me to sit down with this person to fill out a form, to go in the file, to get more money, has nothing to do with that. As an employee, I want to be crystal clear as to what I'm working on because my boss talks to me all the time. So I'd look for one-on-one meetings if you could do it. I do think you could do the lunch and learns where you maybe sit down and learn something, but even a lunch with the CEO, lunch with the executive, whatever is appropriate. I think the more places that you can have communication, maybe it is providing more information on pieces of paper in a break room. I'm not a huge fan of that, but if that's what you're at, that's fine. But more video, more e-learning. You know, the greatest thing ever is being able to text on a smartphone device. So I think if you're allowed to do that, depending on the country that you're in, I would be propping out more information or saying, hey, I'm going to be available if you ever need to talk to me about whatever. So, you know, I listed, I don't know, 7, 8, 9 things right there that I think if you just created a culture of communication, you'll eventually create a culture that rocks. Communication is really one of the biggest issues that people have in keeping the culture going, honestly.
Yeah, I read an article back during the heat of the COVID, and we were in lockdown, that a CEO every Friday, he sends out a note to all the employees, letting them know what he's been working on this week, letting them know that what he's been struggling with. But in the end, he kind of closed it out. We're all in this together. If you have ideas, send me a note. It doesn't mean that I've got a solution, but we can all work it out together. And I'm like brilliant.
Yeah, I like it.
It took 20 minutes, 15, 20 minutes to put that together and send it out every Friday. Think of the connectivity.
Yeah. I think you can never over communicate. I think if people sat around from a leadership standpoint and said, what can we do? And then let's listen to them and let's see what they would like. I think you're going to be in a much better place versus that top-down approach. Those days are getting tougher and tougher.
Yeah. Yeah. Someone just commented, no one is budgeting on salary, expense, and results. It's what people are paying for. A Jim Knightism.
Yes, I'll take it. I'll take it.
Yeah, a Knightism. Because you're dropping so many nuggets here. You know, and one of the reasons that I wanted to have you on, and I know your schedule was busy, you know, but you're in the thickest of the culture piece. This is what you talk about. This is your business. Rockstar companies. Give us some examples of rockstar companies and some of the initiatives that they're using to build this status as a rockstar company.
Well, you know, I do think that rockstar companies, I look internally now more than anything else, only because of the external results. You know, you look at least in my country, I look at Forbes and Fortune magazine. When they talk about the Fortune 500, I run to those lists because I want to see who are my hospitality buddies, my HR friends that are on there. But, you know, I also see the ones that fall off the list. They maybe had a great product. Maybe they were first to the market. But what I've discovered now, because I speak in front of a lot of them, I write books about them, I have seen that internally they are communicating like crazy to all of their team members. Everybody is all going in the same direction. And when you can get everybody singing off the same song sheet, it isn't that they just hit a budget, they just hit a number, they just hit the list once. The trajectory constantly goes up. So these companies, and again, some of them you might not know internationally, but of course, we all talk about Chick-fil-A. I'm a huge fan of Chick-fil-A in this country. Yeah. Again, their product is fantastic. The environment's great. Yeah. A lot of their processes and tools are fantastic. It's the people. It's how you made me feel. That's way more important than anything else. That's where the loyalty factor comes in. So we've got a lot of companies that I know of a lot. Trader Joe's.
Yes.
Trader Joe. And I sort of stay away from the ones like Disney, Starbucks, Apple, Nordstrom, even though I might mention them a little bit in my book. I'm always talking about the ones that are unique and different. Sometimes even one location. Zappos has now become like, they're almost always in the top 10 of health studies globally. That's a single location. They're an online shoe company. And they're one of the greatest service cultures that are out there. Blows my mind. Pike Place Market. This is a fish market in Seattle. Some of your audience may know who they are. These are people that sell fish. They're stinky fishmongers, but they started throwing these big, huge fish, and it's become edutaining for people. It's the #1 tourist destination now in that city. That's a single location. So I think about places like that, that if I can shine a white hot spotlight on them just a little bit more, they don't need my help. They're already crushing it. I love talking about those companies that are sort of the underdog. There may be one location, maybe they're small and they're trying to get bigger, or perhaps they're big, which is even more impressive to me, that they're a massive organization, yet they got everybody singing off the same sheet of music like you two. They're producing Herculean results because everybody knows the role that they play in the organization. So, those are 3-4 companies that I would say that do a great job. But man, I talk about them all the time, and it's usually because of the person or the persons.
So here's what I captured from that. The fish business.
Yes.
The shoe business, the chicken business, not the Facebooks, the Googles, and all of these people. A product line that you was shoes, fish.
Yeah.
But we're creating what the same as these people are creating.
That's right. And I could do that. I talked to a brigadier general in the Air Force who's changing the culture of everybody that she has underneath her. And it is amazing to talk about her. I talk about a property management company called Carter Haston that nobody even knows of, but internally, they're one of the greatest cultures that I've ever been around. I talk about FurnitureDealer.net. This is a guy who's got a company that probably has about 30 millennials and Gen Z working for him. They got like a company dog and drones and everything inside their warehouse. They only produce websites for furniture companies. Like, it is that narrow. And yet, when I came into contact with them, they're one of the greatest cultures, not just internally, but their business results are like that. So when I can find an industry, or be specific, a company inside of an industry that is just crushing it, those are the ones I love to talk about. But yes, we can talk about shoes and fish and chicken all day long, because I love those companies too.
Yeah. So let's take a break and we'll come back. And we have your video. We're going to show that over the break and we'll come right back.
You got it.
Okay.
People want to be treated special, right? You already know that. You know it and I know it. The takeaway is we have got to figure out a way on a regular basis to treat people like they're rock royalty. If we do that, they're going to keep coming back. We will create lifelong raving fans. I smile watching that whole thing. It's like 4.5 minutes long, and I am grinning ear to ear as soon as the thing starts. I'm like, I can only imagine, how do we put that into your world? Just to take it, just to amp it up to get to the next level. Because some of us are already there, and others, we're still sort of getting our sea legs in a lot of areas. You're producing results, but you want more. I want more. I'm an experiential starved consumer, man. I'm on the hunt. I'm looking for anybody to do something different with me. When I go to eat, drink, shop, stay, play, I'm looking for people to treat me special. Like I said, what you give me is loyalty. Like, I'm going to keep coming back. And I got a loud mouth. I'm telling everybody. And I only talk about the awesome companies and the ones that are crappy. I don't talk about middle of the road. So in my mind, I want people to suck up to the top category to say, I am going to treat people like they're rock royalty, because they're going to come back, spend more money, and talk about me. I'm constantly looking for that. And who wouldn't want more? I don't even care what number I'm actually getting. I always want more. You give me some number. Top line sales, bottom line profit, EBITDA, employee satisfaction, team member satisfaction, client satisfaction. Pick it. I want more, man. If I turned around and I had no other competitors, nobody even near me, I would still want more. Aren't there some hungry people in the room? So some way we got to start thinking, how can I'm already doing this? I want to amp it up a little bit more.
For the audience members, to give you the reference point, I had to come after him after a performance like that, shaking in my boots.
Get out. No. You held the room, my friend. I will say, watching that video, though, that's a great clip that you pulled, because that I'm grinning from ear to ear just thinking about that moment. That was for a flooring and carpet company. And again, They were sort of the belle of the ball. They were sort of a boutique group, but everybody who came into contact with them, their clients really loved them. And this was an opportunity. This is pre-COVID, but they were getting their people together. How can we take it to the next step? So I had a lot of fun with them. But yeah.
Well, you always have a lot of fun on stage. Trust me on that one. You always have a lot of fun on stage.
Yes.
Okay. So let's talk through this. If I'm not satisfied, the culture, the company that I'm working for now treats me any kind of way, treats the workers without any regard, and I'm looking to try and find a rock star company, what would you advise a job seeker to look for? What are some signs they would look for? What should we ask in an interview or to get a better understanding of what is it like? Because all we see is kind of a facade. We don't really see what's going on inside.
Yeah. Yeah, I think it's a great question. I think, and we've alluded to a lot of these. I think right out of the gate, there's some stuff that I'm hoping that the company would probably put in front of you, but you can discover it on your own. You can certainly go and look online, look at their Facebook page, their website. Do they do the things they say they're going to do? But right out of the gate, I'd be asking about how they really strengthen their culture. What is their purpose, their mission, their values? If they can't adequately talk about that, or it's not displayed, or maybe this is a place, a business that you've experienced and you don't feel like that, then you can kind of in your head know it's a liar, liar, pants on fire. But I'd look, culture, purpose, mission, vision. Are they talking about these things? One, I would talk to some of the employees. You sort of said this earlier. I talk to them and say, how is it working here? How do the executives, the leaders communicate with you? Like, get them to get as specific as they possibly can, because that's going to determine what's going to happen in the future. It'll predict exactly the type of communication that you're ultimately going to get. I'd look at the benefits package. Again, I know we've talked on that 2-3 times, but get beyond the salary, the insurance, the 401k, the retire, all of that stuff, the price of admission. Talk about the things that are going to really be important to me. And again, some of these things you wouldn't even think about in the past, but it is about mental health, wellness, mental health. It is pet insurance. It's flexibility, allowing me to work from home, like those types of things. What kind of mentorship program do you have in place? Like, those are really, really important. And then how do they measure performance? If they're only going to measure on the metrics around sales and profits, unless that's massively important to you, I'd step away from it. Let me see if they're measuring things that are around the culture, around the service philosophy, around my own performance, not just whether the company succeeds or not. So I think on the front end, the back end, I would do as much work as I possibly could before I ever go and decide that I'm going to spend my time and energy there.
You mentioned displayed. Here's what I've noticed. You go look at companies' website.
Yeah.
And you'll see you see products, you see leadership, same old. But there's nothing there about what you were just talking about. What is it like to work here? Here's videos of people. Here's fun that we're having. All these kinds of things. And I say you have all this massive real estate, and you're only focused on your customer for the most part.
Yeah.
And even if I go through 3 links to find careers, up comes 20 jobs. Nothing to sell me.
Yep. Exactly. I was exposed to SodaStream. If you're familiar with them, they make their own soda. There's a device that you can get both commercially and residential. Their entire video that they really focus on, and they have it on their website, but also internally in their day one orientation, is a video about their values. They only talk about the values. Now, we did that at Hard Rock too, but I thought SodaStream was so innovative. It's creative. It's super funny. It's all made up of employees talking about what it's like, yes, to work here, but how the values are not just words on the wall. They're not just a wallet card. They're not just a video. They just happen to be in the video. Yeah. It was all about the internal environment. It had nothing to do. They barely talked about their product. They certainly didn't talk about the customers at all. Again, I think that's kind of what the associates, the team members, the employees are looking for. When you can pay more attention to me, I'm going to bring the thunder when it comes to the customer. I'm going to parlay that experience over to them. So again, you said it best, Ron, I think at the top of the interview here, those that are not just focusing on the customer experience, if at all, because if you take care, this is this old service profit chain. I really believe this. You throw all of your focus, time, energy, rigor, effort, money on the employees, it'll make its way to the customer experience. No doubt.
Yeah. That's, Richard Branson says the exact same thing.
Yep.
In doing that, you focus on them, it'll come out the other end. That's the business case behind that.
Exactly. And I think he and his company have done a pretty good job, don't you think?
They have done a great job.
They're going to make it.
Yeah. And knowing you, and then I was reading the other day that you give back quite a bit. You're always looking to give back. Even on revenue, you give a certain portion of this. Where did that come from, and why is that important?
Yeah, I try not to pound on my chest that much. I mean, it probably started with my parents. I just had really good values, about helping those in need. And then, because I'm faith based at church, I do sort of have that ingrained in my head. I think about the 10% of tithing and giving back again, hoping that the church is going to do something with that. But honestly, I think the 2 decades I spent at Hard Rock, they had mottos that were up on the wall, since we were talking about that just now with values. But the words love all, serve all, take time to be kind, all is one. But even the most important to me was save the planet. They had that ensconced in every cafe, hotel, casino. And if you're going to say save the planet and you don't do it, people call you on it. And I know a lot of people don't know this about Hard Rock, but there's practically not a single marketing initiative that actually happens that doesn't have some sort of a charitable component. So philanthropy just wound up being a part of my day-to-day at that business. I feel obligated now and honored. It's my favorite checks to write. I give 10% of all my book sales to No Kid Hungry. So that's focused more on the restaurant side because that was my background.
Mm-hmm.
And I love an industry that is focused on something that they can do something about. At least in the United States, 40% of all food goes to waste, but yet 1 in 5 kids go to bed hungry. I go, how is that even possible? So if we can get people to understand, if I could help eliminate childhood hunger worldwide, but certainly in the United States, I'd love to see that during my lifetime. So it's a small little part, but I do what I can. And then giving 10% to Cannonball Kids Cancer. That's a local cancer charity. My business partner, Brant Menswar, and I have both lost people personally to cancer in our families. And it's just something that I love doing again. I sometimes switch up my philanthropic initiatives, but, I'm just a big believer. I'm blessed. I think that when you give back, not that this is the reason to do it, it's going to come back to you tenfold.
Yeah.
And it's been like that in my life. I've been very lucky with my long and winding road. And I think a lot of it has to deal with helping those that are less fortunate.
Yeah, because long and winding road from that's also Beatles, correct?
It is. Well done. There's going to be a quiz at the end, my friends.
Quiz at the end. Yeah, that's pretty cool. So, grade school teacher to this level. What was the learnings from the grade school teaching kids to where you are now? Nuggets that you could share?
Yeah, it was middle school. So this would have been 11, 12, 13-year-olds for the most part, which is an odd age for all of us. I actually did do some grammar, some elementary school, but it was a little bit too low level for me. High school, you can't tell on video, but I'm a pretty short guy. Everybody was taller than I was. I had a baby face back then, so I looked like one of the students. I figured, you know what? I'm going to get in trouble. This is not going to work for me. So middle school was perfect, but I think the learning for me, it was just being patient. Even today, I understand parents are probably not as patient. I'm sure school teachers, I bow to school. People in public education are real superheroes to me, but I can imagine that they probably deal with a lot of chaos. That they really have to be resilient in a lot of ways. So I think the learning for me was just being patient. People have learning disabilities, people with dyslexia, emotionally handicapped, severe emotionally disabled. You've got all kinds of issues with mental health these days. I think the fact that you've got all of that baggage, if you will, but people learn differently. Some are visual, some are auditory. This individual is going to learn different from this person. And I think when I parlayed that over to my Hard Rock career as a trainer, ultimately running departments, that sort of was a great nugget for me that just sort of carried through my entire career. And even now, I can tell when I'm in front of an audience, if it's not resonating with them, I've got to switch it up. I might have to change my voice, get some movement going in here, do a different exercise, use a different analogy, whatever it is. So, the things I learned as a middle school teacher really helped me out today.
Yeah. So that's a good nugget for people that speak. You read the room, and that's exactly what you're talking about. Because if it's not, you see them sitting there like this.
Yep.
How do I get you to do this and say, yeah?
Exactly. And I will say this, Ron, I have a lot of people that will approach me to say, hey, I'm thinking about being a professional speaker. How can I get into this job? And part of it are some of the things that you're talking about. There's probably a list of 20 things that I could give somebody, but there is nothing better, nothing than actually getting out there and practicing it. So if somebody is thinking about doing this, I know this was what I had to do.
Yeah.
I got out and practiced. I volunteered for free for everything I could think of.
Pay
The
the dues.
Rotary Club, something in the community, something at church. If you want me to speak, I will do it. And it might be 5 minutes, it might be an hour, I might not be that great. But every time you do a little bit more, you learn something, you get your sea legs. And yes, I would go get some training that will teach people when they're not making eye contact or they got their arms folded or whatever. There are things you can do. But before you even get to that level, you got to stick yourself out there and practice. Out of anything that I'll talk about, that's the number one thing to make yourself a better speaker.
Yeah, I saw a post online and said, join this webinar, and all of a sudden, all this revenue stream is going to come into this. And I'm like, no.
Yeah, good luck.
Yeah, good luck with that one. You know what I mean? So you have these pivotal moments. You know, you've mentioned the 3,000 people. I think mine was 300 or 400 people that I had to get in front of. And after I finished that session, which was great, got a standing ovation. So what I did, I started volunteering. You need anybody to speak, because I needed to get better at what I was doing.
Yeah, that's right. Just lean into it. Even when I was a manager at Hard Rock, I volunteered to handle every guest complaint. I mean, nobody wanted to do it, but if I had to go to table 36 and solve a problem, I volunteered because I figure I'd get better. I volunteered to handle coaching and counseling sessions with employees. I volunteered to do interviews with employees. I just would lean in. Even if there was a fear factor, you're only going to get better as you practice all those. So I'm with you on that. And I know you're a great moderator. I'm hoping that we get the chance to do something together at some point in the future. That'd be awesome.
Yeah, that would be great. Well, you know, it would reinvent the 10 years ago session that we did, where you scare the audience because you were out there.
Yes, I try not to scare them now. Like I said, there might be some initial shock and awe, but
when I say scare, I mean everyone was so into, and I'm thinking, oh my goodness, now I've got to come back up on stage and finish my piece.
Yeah, that hasn't changed, my friend. I still pride myself on trying to be edutaining. Like, we're gonna have some laughs, we'll have some yucks, but I'm loud, I'm fast, I'm aggressive, I'm mobile. But I also wanted to be meaty. I want everybody to push back. I don't care how many people are in the audience, push back from their table and go, that was awesome. That was a great use of my time. I now have actual nuggets to get better in my life or in my work life. So that hasn't changed, man. 10 years later.
Okay. So we're gonna make this happen. Make this happen possibly in Dubai. So talk to me about the leadership podcast that you and your partner has started, the leadership podcast, and give us the website that we can follow that.
Yeah, it's called Thoughts That Rock. As you can imagine, everything I do is rock and roll and music inspired. My best friend, who also is my business partner, we have 4 different companies together. One of those is the podcast, where we basically in 30 minutes, we'll have a rock star guest on there. It might be a philanthropist, an astronaut, a journalist, a CEO. And we really only ask them one question. What's the best piece of advice you've ever been given? Ooh. That's it. And we wind up providing one that's sort of complimentary as well, but we let the conversation go from there. So it's quick. We do it weekly. We just finished up with our season finale. We'll start back in the fall again, but I put out a lot of reruns on that as well. You can go find it wherever podcasts are, whether you're iOS or whether you're Android as well, wherever it is you listen to podcasts. But if you really want to check out the website and hear them for free, it's thoughtsthatrock.com.
Okay, cool. My man, Jim, thank you so much for being a guest. I knew it was going to be great. I knew this was going to be great. It's good to see you after 11 years, but we're going to make this happen a lot sooner than next time.
I hope so, my friend. And listen, I'm so appreciative of you having me on. I'm super happy watching your success and seeing you from a distance, but I had fun doing my best with you guys.
Okay, man. Hang on for a minute as we close out.
You got it.